Well, welcome all. Last week I did a bit of a parody on the Zeapon Micro 2 slider versus the slide pod, and in that video I spoke about the new app that comes with the new motor, and how I particularly didn't like it, but I hadn't received the motor at the time, and I showed how well that old app works with the slider itself. Now, a couple of days after posting the video, I actually received the Zeapon Pons PT panning motor. I only bought the motor because that's all I really wanted. I didn't want pan and tilt, and the old app does not work with the panning motor, so that's a real disappointment to me. And rather than, or before I go and do any sort of technical discussion about the motor itself, I felt that I had to address the big elephant in the room, and that is the latest Zeapon app that is used to control the sliders and the pan and tilt motors. Now, I'll show you how this thing works now, which I didn't do last time, and you'll notice there that it's searching for the motors. Sometimes it picks them up, other times it doesn't, and I don't know why. So now it just can't find either of the motors, so I'll click on the head, and okay, so it's found it. Okay, no prompt, don't need that. So that's connected, and now the rail slider is also connected at the same time. And this time, for some reason, it went to the main screen. Normally you have to press the done on the front page before it actually transitions to the main screen. Now you'll notice the main screen is totally different to the old app. No graphical user interface. There's nothing really that defines in an easy way how you're supposed to use it. You've got a slider there that just goes total speed. Now, after working and playing around with this, there's no intermediary speeds like you do with the old app, where you had the graph that you could slow the things down, speed it up between the waypoints. Everything just is either one speed or not. Now, let's say if I want to do the slider, I'll move it across a bit. That was its starting point. That's its, if it will take. No, this is one of the problems. I'm going to have to kill the app and start again. It's really buggy. It is just so buggy that it's just frustrating just even to use it in the most basic of fashions to test it out and whatever. So here we go, hunting around, not connected. Go through the same process again. And I'm showing this warts and all so that you can see what's going on, and rather than doing some slick example where it all just works hunky-dory, because it doesn't. And you note the slider is not connected, so I've got to go and select that, and I don't want a prompt on there. And now the main screen, you've got to press done for it to go into the next screen. Now, for some reason it remembered the waypoint that I had before there at the starting point. Don't know why, but let's see what happens. Nope. Now both are moving for some reason. Go figure. Honestly, I don't want to go too long with this and try to show you how this thing doesn't work, because it doesn't. There's no definable way to actually see how do you set the slider to move and how do you set the panning head to move. Given that if you had the complete kit, you'd have the slider, the pan and tilt motor situated on top of the slider, but you've got no way to control it. The best I've been able to find from here is you can pick 2 points for each of the motors. So you get A and B for the slider, C and D for the panning motor, and then you've got E and F left over for the tilt motor if you had that. And that's all the movement you can get with it, so that when you run them up and play them, in this case it's only one thing moving at the moment, whereas before the other one started moving. You don't have, well, there it goes. So that's the sum total of what you can do with this app. There is no controlling independently with the app itself, like the earlier app with the graphical interface is what they should have implemented here, and had 3 graphical interfaces for it, so that you had one for the slider and one for each of the motors for the pan and tilt, and visually actually select the points and select the speeds that you want the things to move at. And if the screen wasn't big enough for it, you could tap on one of the graphs to enlarge it a little bit and then go back again. So, and with this thing, there's nothing. There's no instructions for it, and from what I've been able to work out, it's very, very limited in what you can actually do with it. Now, it's got all sorts of fancy things up here for time-lapse, stupid control. It's almost totally designed for people with a camera wanting to do time-lapse. Each one of them has a different mode of time-lapse shooting, and the video side of it has almost been completely dropped. One of the fundamental features for this is doing a bit of video work, and they've got all these different time lapses and trigger systems available as a selection. And so they've gone diametrically opposite. The previous app, all of that was on a second page, totally independent from the video side, which is what I think the front page is all about. And for the life of me, I can't get this thing to work properly at all. So some of the stuff that I wanted it to do, and I'll just give you a bit of an example, was if I'm doing some narrative stuff and having the camera on a tripod, I might want to walk into a particular scene to emphasise something that's going on. Let's say at a car show, for example, I'll walk past various vehicles and I want to focus on one particular vehicle, for example. So I'd start the camera on a tripod, because with this setup, when I get to the technical side in another video, I'll show you how I can actually do it quite easily with a fairly lightweight setup. But I'd have the camera following me briefly, and then at a certain point I'd get it to slow right down. It'd be ideal if you could actually get it to stop for a predetermined time, so that I could actually talk about the features, and then maybe continue on to another part of the actual scene itself, and have that programmed in there. It's a little bit of stuffing around, but not that difficult if you could do this properly like with the old app. So this is a complete failure. At the moment, the only way I can do it is actually by doing it manually and holding the phone in front of the camera and then moving it. And it'll work, but it's not necessarily the ideal automated way that you'd think you could do with this. So the app itself is just terrible. Quite honestly, my view, whoever developed the app should be sacked, and whoever approved it should be sacked as well, and get somebody who knows something about user interface design and who uses cameras and so forth to get them to design the app based on the original app that they brought out, because that was fundamentally the proper way to go about it. It was a good starting point and it just needed to be expanded on. But what they've done is thrown the baby out with the bathwater and come up with something that just doesn't work. Sadly, in the IT world and app development world and so on, that happens too often. Somebody comes up with a great old idea, they know exactly what happens, they know exactly how it works, they've got some crazy ideas about how this is not so much better, and it ends up being anything but better. It actually is a retrograde step. So I don't want to go on too much longer. I just wanted to point out significant failures with it. I used to recommend the Zeapon products highly, but if this app is the only thing that's going to be available in future, I don't think I can recommend the product to anybody, because that would be disingenuous on my part to recommend a mechanically, technically great product and then have the operating system for it being a complete shambles. So unfortunately, I'm very disappointed with that particular aspect of the products, which have generally been really good. So take it on board. Hope Zeapon sees this and goes back to basics and starts all over again and just throws away this piece of rubbish and produces something that actually is usable by videographers. Leave the photography side on a separate section altogether, but for videographers you need something a little bit more usable and functional than what you've actually designed now. So on that note, I'll call it cheers.